Good morning. You ready? Ready? Good morning. My name is Jason Dunn, Chief Executive Officer of the National Coalition of Black Community Professionals, and we are here at IMEX for the 7th edition of the Black Table that is really gray. It's gray, but we're going to make it.
I was wondering where
Black.
your ferns are.
Yes, we don't have any ferns, but that's okay. So we are here with the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Miles Partnership, Melissa Cherry. We want to hear her story. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for us to kind of engage with you. We know you. We call her the Oracle at Coalition.
Only Jason.
We call her the Oracle at Coalition, and she lives up to her reputation. So let's just first talk about how did you get into the industry, and let's just start with there. How did you get into the industry?
So I got into the industry by accident. I actually kind of an arts background, so was in undergrad in the School of Fine Arts. Was very much on a track.
What undergrad did you go to?
I went to Howard University,
okay.
The real HU, PS.
Just making sure.
And I did my grad work at the University of Southern California in LA. So was very much on a different path. I had an opportunity at SC to do a work study program, which ended up being at the LA Convention and Tourism Bureau in their cultural tourism department. That was only one of 5 departments in the U.S. at the time that was very focused on arts and culture, community and neighborhoods from a tourism perspective. So had a great opportunity. I had a great boss, who really cared for my, career development. And so worked there for the first 5 years, but that was in 1996, and I've been in the industry ever since.
Wow. And so you went through several opportunities. You were at DI, you were at the Convention Bureau. Don't shortchange yourself.
I didn't know how long you wanted this story to be.
Tell the story.
So being in LA for 5 years, 2011 happened, or 9/11 happened, excuse me, not 2011. But and then I made a choice to go back home. I'm from Chicago. I then worked at a museum for 10 years. My background is primarily now in marketing and communications, specifically strategic communications, strategic planning, branding, and crisis PR. And so was at a museum for 10 years, and then I went on to Choose Chicago, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau there, went on to Destinations International. I was their Chief Marketing Officer and COO, and then now I'm at Miles Partnership as their Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer.
So art first. And history, you have some history somewhere too.
Art history.
Art history.
Yep.
And then you jumped over to the tourism side based upon your exposure. And then you went to Choose Chicago first?
I went to a museum in Chicago first. So
right.
I was over external affairs there.
Okay, cool. All right. Then Choose Chicago. So talk about that transition from coming from the museum to Choose Chicago and the differences of how you introduce and show up.
Yeah. So I'll actually start with LA because that role was very unique at the time, in that though my position was very much administrative, I was one of very few of color individuals in the organization. And based on the fact that we were working with the arts and culture community, that meant that you were also working with cultural organizations that weren't necessarily tourism specific. So we would work with social service organizations. One was the Watts Labor Community Action Committee. They're strictly social services, but they wanted to start understanding tourism and how their facility, for example, could be an attraction or a venue for people to come down and see Watts. For those that don't know, you have Watts Towers. It's, phenomenal kind of attraction, but it's very hard to convince people to come down to Watts. So that work was really about understanding the needs of, I think, community organizations and businesses, introducing them to tourism, understanding how tourism works, because that's the thing, is that it's not obvious, right? Like, if people just don't show up, you can't just put people in an ad or put them on a website. And back in 96, websites weren't there yet, right? So it was really about being very deliberate about community organizing, engaging with communities and getting them to understand. So bringing them to the table when we would do like member or partner events so they could actually engage with other tourism folks and understand what that means, bringing those folks down to Watts. So there was a lot of opportunities, and I managed a committee about 120 people within that. And so, that kind of engaging and that organizing has always been something really key to the work that I like to do from a communications perspective. And so from that growth, just doing that work kind of parlayed into working at a museum side, doing strategic communications, working with curatorial teams, development teams, fundraising, And then doing the Choose Chicago, I was the first vice president of cultural tourism there. I worked specifically with the City of Cultural Affairs, Choose Chicago, and other city agencies to develop the first cultural tourism strategy. We introduced, Theater Week. We introduced Chinese New Year, some other activations, and then we launched really for the first time, I think, from a bureau perspective of all-inclusive neighborhood kind of macro site within the site, which covered about 77 neighborhoods across the city of Chicago.
Wow. So you understand the power of the community relationship, not just a transaction that sometimes
Yes.
Our industry tends to yield to it. No, that's dope. I mean, really,
Yeah.
that's
It's
an issue.
exhausting, but
Yeah,
yes.
that's so how did that, taking that skill set, was it difficult to convince leadership on the other side? Because I assume you had to work with sales and the other. Is it hard to get them to understand the concept of relationships versus the transactional methods that are currently used or have been used in the past?
Yeah, I mean, so from like the cultural tourism perspective back in the day, it's interesting because now when you look at marketing teams, that's fully integrated into the brand of a destination. Like it was never not part of it, right? And so it's very much what differentiates destinations. So it was more so getting the industry to understand the importance of arts and culture and what that brought to the destination experience. So it wasn't just me as a young black woman trying to like make this effort on our own. It was actually the white male that was leading the department that was struggling, trying to get the other kind of like leadership in the organization and in the city to understand why the arts was important to the messaging from a tourism perspective. And also making sure that we weren't just like, doing the ads and having meetings. We were also working with sales to book meetings. So specifically meetings that were related to arts and culture, like their economic significance in terms of like having and hosting an event, like what did that look like? But it also gave us the opportunity to show like sales teams, like how do you work outside of a convention center, hosting meetings in particular venues that were not usual, so to speak,
Sure.
Working with vendors that were diverse, things like that.
So you go from you go from LA to the museum.
I did. I started as an intern at LA, so that's right. Yes,
all right.
that is right.
Museum, and then you to Chicago, and then you came to DI.
Right.
All right. So talk about that experience and the transition to jump from the one side to the other side.
Yeah, so transitioning from Destinations International was interesting because I always worked on the consumer leisure side. So, from a VP of marketing perspective, you work with sales, but you very much are focused on the consumer facing kind of like advertising and campaign components. Going on the association side, that's purely B2B. What was interesting about Destinations International, and I'm not saying anything out of turn.
Well, you're a COO too. Make sure that.
Well, so I was chief marketing officer when I came. I left
Okay.
as chief operating officer.
Okay.
But that association at the time was very much in crisis. There was an executive that was, replaced, and I came in with Don. Don was the CEO in Chicago, so that's actually interesting. Most of the executive team from Chicago left and went to DMAI to kind of like fix the place, so to speak. And so we were very much for the first 3 years. What I think the saying is like you're flying or building the plane as you're
flying.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Thank you, that. And I mean, it was nuts. I mean, it went through like full like federal like investigative forensic audits. I mean, it was just an amazing experience from a crisis PR. We went through rebranding the whole organization. We had to evaluate, redeliver the whole value proposition from being a member organization. Wow. I mean, the industry had basically left DMAI, right? And so it was having to go back and convince them that we are your trade association from a destination or CVB perspective and that we're here for you. They essentially had migrated over to U.S. travel, right? And that's their bigger, organization than focus on what the mission for DI was. And so it was like buy-in and rebuilding trust was literally our first 2 years. And that's a hard thing to do.
Wow. So what are the key components of that? I mean, because you had to. Yeah, I'm asking you the question.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. I mean, the key components to that is really maintaining and building relationships, right? And having transparent conversations, but also being responsive. That's the thing. When you have members, you got to respond to their needs, and that was not being met. And so there was not that trust or we didn't have that reliability, so to speak. People didn't expect that, so kind of managing those expectations. And so, I mean, literally, we spent a lot of our time on the road showing up in destinations. So, I mean, we went to California and probably across 5 days went to 8 different cities and met with CVBs. Like, it was just this constant road show. And then it was just really realigning with the board, realigning with like key stakeholders, having those conversations, and then building the tools that they needed.
So were you the first? Were you the first of color at a CMO at DI?
I mean, probably. I don't know.
Yeah. So
it's
you
not
were.
like pictures of people in the office.
Yeah.
I don't know.
we gonna stamp that today that you were. How about that?
I was definitely the first COO. No,
Okay.
I wasn't. No, I take that back.
Okay. That's CMO though, right? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I was the chief marketing officer. I was
Right.
going to say COO, but actually Charles Duffers was the first
He
black
was,
COO. Yeah.
but he's also a member of Coalition. By
I
the
know.
way.
I know. I was like, let me get my story right. I don't know what Charles looking for me.
He gonna watch it like, yeah, sure enough. So, all right. So we go from intern to in LA to the museum to True Chicago, and now we're at Miles Partnership.
Yeah.
Now, what is Miles Partnership?
So Miles Partnership is a tourism marketing agency that works with destinations, associations in the hospitality industry to essentially, our mission is to inspire and improve travel, and we do that through marketing and communications, media, website builds, guides, all kind of activations from a tourism marketing perspective.
And so, if I am a CVB or an association, how would you engage with us? What were some of the things that you would work to help solve or to enhance?
So Miles, from a broad perspective, would work with them from any myriad of ways, from doing media plans and media buys and executing that production and creative on that behalf, building websites from soup to nuts, from content development to actual website architecture, SEO, all of the things. And then we do a lot of still guide work, so visitors guides, meeting planner guides, things like that. I specifically run a practice within Miles, which is more from a consulting practice. So I'm a hybrid of one of our subsidiary companies that is a strategic consulting agency from a destination perspective, and then the DEI practice kind of hybrids a lot of that organizational strategic planning, as well as building inclusive campaigns for clients from both the leisure and the meeting side.
And so people would, so I want to understand this. So the consultant side, so your chief diversity officer, you're also a partner, aren't you a partner?
Yes. So
Okay.
we are a partner model at
Okay.
Miles, and so as part of being part of the executive team, yes.
Okay.
But
You see how she slides all these promotions and things in?
I'm not sliding.
Interesting to slide. I'm a partner. Yes, I'm the COO. Yes, the CMO. Well, keep talking.
Yeah,
Keep talking.
yeah.
Go ahead. Keep talking.
But to your point about being the chief diversity officer, my team also internally faces. So technically, our biggest client is the company. So we do internal facing organizational, strategic work as it relates to DEI and our commitment and executing on that, from supplier diversity programs to team training, to fundamentally changing how we do our business from a inclusive practice around like what marketing campaigns need to look like, how you produce them, how you engage with communities, things like that.
And so associations, you work with a lot of them behind the scenes to help with strategy, to help with enhancing their brand positioning, even to your point, remaking their entire organizational model, right? And so,
Yes.
So what are some of your success stories that you can point to, if you can?
Yeah.
And what are some difficulties that you've experienced in your roles?
Yeah, I think one of the success stories is actually two clients. One, you all are familiar with Visit Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Sheila's a big part of
Yeah.
Coalition, but we've been working with them since October 21. When Claude came in as a new CEO during COVID, which was a crazy time for everyone, but spending time with the team and still working with them from that perspective to build an organizational strategy. In addition to working with them on a community engagement strategy, we're working with them right now on a organizational structure strategy. So really being kind of an extension of the team has been quite the success. And what has been great to see with Detroit is them transition from kind of the Detroit that was back then to where they are now. I mean, you see them everywhere. They just hosted the NFL draft. I mean, that's a major lift for a destination. It's not cheap. And so to really rally and bring, I think, a community together to host something like that, and they really went beyond, I think, in engaging with the community. So building on that, we're working on doing a community engagement strategy now with them. But it's just been an amazing partnership, and we're just excited to continue to see them evolve as a destination. The other one is actually an association, Americans for the Arts. They're essentially the advocacy organization for arts and culture and really communicate the economic impact in terms of what arts brings. They're like the U.S. Travel, but for the arts side of things. And so what we did from a consulting practice is we served as their research equity consultant. So we worked on basically they do an economic impact study every 5 years, and this was their 6th iteration. So if they've done this for the last 30 years, they wanted to take a look at their methodology to include BIPOC organization as well as survey attendees who attend arts and cultural organizations so that that story was being told. And what's interesting, and that took 2 years to actually collect that because it was collected during COVID. So you had over 250,000 survey respondents. You had over 400 organizations that led and were part of that. And within each of those cities, you had their arts and culture community participate in that. And so it was a massive undertaking to coordinate, changing the methodology. Of course, there was not... to tell an arts organization that's a very mainstream, essentially white institution that you now need to collect from attendees of color and like the strain that put them through, so to speak, and just, the reaction to that was interesting. However, we did succeed in getting that. What's more interesting in the finding is that it was only a difference of 17% in spending in terms of how much attendees spend at a mainstream organization versus an organization that's either BIPOC-led or centered. And what that means is...
Say that one more time, because some people hear that. Say that one more time.
So the difference
Put the mic to your mouth. I want to hear that. There you go.
I don't want to get all my...
It's all right. We wipe it off with Clorox. You're all right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Clorox should be a sponsor of the Black Table, by the way. Clorox. Everybody smile. Clorox. All right, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, so one of the big findings was that there was only a difference of 17% in terms of spending by BIPOC attendees at arts and cultural organizations. And what that means from a big picture is that when you fundamentally look at how funding is either granted or provided to BIPOC-led or BIPOC-centered organizations is underfunded significantly compared to their counterparts in mainstream organizations. The fact that you have attendees spending almost the same amount as non or white attendees or non-of-color attendees, then we need to address the inequity of how that funding is actually divvied up and how those organizations are seen in terms of their contribution to the arts and culture.
So what data points can you, a couple more minutes, what data point... You got your watch.
It wasn't my phone flash. That's all.
What data points can people who are seeking to change the perception of BIPOC or the Black community spend? Can you recommend that they use in various meetings?
I mean, it is, research is hard, I think, sometimes because organizations they don't have the bandwidth for that, right? But I think there's simple ways in just collecting, asking 5 questions: where you're from, how much you spent, other expenditure questions that you could in collecting and, having that information, but then also doing something with that information in terms of telling your narrative, in terms of your social and economic impact. So the good thing about Americans for the Arts is that they do this through local art agencies, which are essentially state art councils and local, county arts commissions. So a lot of that is done on behalf of these organizations, and they can use that data, and there's a calculator that they can use within their local community to actually input those inputs and get an economic impact without having to go through the exercise of commissioning a study like this.
That makes sense. So if I'm a sales manager or chief sales officer at, let's say, Columbus, right?
Right.
Or a convention center somewhere like that. So why would I? So I would call Miles to help me identify ways to strengthen our brand. I would call Miles to assist in if there's some things I need to reconstruct with organizational-wise. So that's what I would yield to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like to tell people that we're problem solvers. I mean, I'm a fixer just by essentially my skill set. And so I really, for us, it's understanding what you need and then working with you strategically to figure out how to fix it.
So thank you for transitioning to that, because we're talking about you right now in a couple more minutes. Thank you. So what's your favorite color?
It's black.
Good, great. All right. So I just want to make sure I'm lay it down a little bit.
Clearly.
Look it back. And then so what do you do to relax? Because you're on the road a lot. So what do you do to kind of, just to breathe a little bit?
Honestly, I mean, people probably don't see this as the perception of me, but I like to be at home. I like to cook and spend time with my family. And I also like to have multiple projects. I always got to be busy. So right now I'm working on transitioning my garden from a summer to fall winter garden. Yeah, stuff like that.
So you have a green thumb? Is your thumb?
Yeah, I got thumbs. Yes. Yes, I have thumbs, but it's not necessarily green per se. I'm learning. My garden this year was all peppers because I live in Atlanta. It's extremely hot, and you can't grow a lot of things in that heat. And so the one thing that survived the most was peppers.
Right. So your passion, right? So you have your passion, you have your personal life. You can bring it up if you want to, but you have your personal life. You manage a lot of things in your personal life. You also garden and you travel. I mean, what brings you peace and what keeps you going other than having projects? I mean, it has to be something else that kind of fuels you to continue your efforts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just personally, I have a passion for helping and trying to give voice to individuals, organizations that don't have it. I mean, I think that's kind of where I'm attracted to working with certain organizations or things, so to speak, is just kind of, I always see that organizations need help, and what frustrates me for them is that they're not starting in the right place, or they're continuing that dysfunction of a cycle of kind of not thinking about it from a strategic perspective. And so it's just this kind of thing. And I try to help get organizations out of that bad cycle and kind of rethink and kind of step out of where they are to kind of get into a new direction.
Yeah. Two last questions. 1 and 2. TikTok. Sorry. I don't care. So, I don't care. What is coalition? What can we do for Miles? And then what opportunities is for us to partner to carry on the mission that you currently stated?
Well, I'm a research nerd, and so I enjoyed at my time at DI working with you all to develop the assessment platform that DI now has for destination organizations from a EDI perspective or social inclusion. No, we don't have to tell that story. We ain't got time for that. But I would say...
She cussed me out, yo. When I first met her, she cussed me out. But go ahead.
Everybody understands why that happened, so I don't need to go down that path of that story. Jason, you know why that happened. But I would say, one of the things that Miles supports on an annual basis with one of our research partners, future partners, is a study on the perception of destination organizations with the meeting planner audience. And so that's actually out right now being collecting information. We did that just last year. And one of the interesting things about that study last year was just kind of DEI being at the top of that list. It's always on the list, but it's never been in the top 3, and it actually was. And then just the importance of kind of values as it relates to destination selection and some other things. So I say all that because what I always get concerned about in collecting that data is who's actually submitting information and being partaking in that. And most likely, and this is not just that agency that I mentioned, but all researchers in terms of the sample's not diverse enough. We don't have enough representation. So I would hope, as we continue to collect data and understand the story from a meetings industry perspective, that we get more of your members to partake to give their feedback so that their stories are being told in that.
Understood. And give us 2 quick words that describe your leadership style and how they can apply it to their everyday efforts.
I mean, my leadership style is strategic yet detailed.
Cool. Let's give her a round of applause. Melissa Cherry. NCBMP.com if you are not a member. NCBMP.com if you're not a member. We have joint memberships with PCMA, MPI, and soon to be ASAE. Come to our conference, November 13th to the 16th in Birmingham, Alabama, at the Sheraton Marriott Hotel. Resilience and strength is a theme. So if you're not there, then you got to be weak, because with us, you got to be strong. NCBMP.com, NCBMP.com. Thank you so much.